with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, breaking, it appears there may be a UPS Teamsters deal would potentially avert a strike. The deadline just 6 days off. Meanwhile, massive protests in Israel as its Supreme Court ponders its response to its disempowerment. Russia hits a backup Ukrainian grain port near NATO member Romania. DOJ sues Texas over its razor-wired floating barrier in the Rio Grande. New report shows multiple states with record-breaking employment, I should say. Big Pharma gears up to fight developing attempt at government drug production. IRS to halt surprise visits to house and businesses amid threats to IRS agents. 1/3 of the Republicans now see Trump unfavorably. Won't make a difference. Florida approves PragerU to its curriculum can be taught in schools now. Jesus. White House sets up a new pandemic preparedness office, and the Arizona school voucher program is a big giveaway to the rich. Where's the op-eds? All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is, in the words of Emma Vigland,
Tuesday.
There you go.
Or whatever I just said.
Know what that voice is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was weird. You were trying to do my little Tuesday thing. You're taking my, that's my hook.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it's like when Sam's calling St. Louis.
Yeah, that's what I'm channeling.
Yep. Well, it goes, it doesn't hurt. I mean, the mispronunciation has taken me far in my career. So why not?
You're doing the Judy Garland. No, no one's seen that. Seen that old musical? No, I'm.
Okay, Grandma.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know.
Let's get to this. I mean, let's put up what was just tweeted. The Teamsters have just tweeted out I guess a press release. Do you want to put that up on the screen? Let's do let's do the next one. It gives the terms.
Yeah.
This is coming up.
Right, here we go. Yeah.
Page 2. Page 2 of that document. Yeah, here we go. Wage increases for full-timers and part-time Teamsters will get existing full and part-time Teamsters get $2.75 an hour in 2003, $7.50 per hour over the length of the contract. Part-timers will be raised up to no less than $21 per hour immediately. Seniority, part-time seniority will be making more. General wage increases for part-time workers will be double the amount obtained in the previous contract. Wage increases for full-timers will keep up UPS Teamsters, the highest paid delivery drivers in the nation, proving their average to $49 per hour. we keep going up there. They will get Martin Luther King Day as a full holiday for the first time. All UPS Teamsters.
They
All
get
UPS Teamsters.
AC now, and which was the initial concession in the trucks that they're going to be purchased after this calendar year, so starting in 24.
No more forced overtime. Part-timers will have priority to perform all seasonal support work. There will be 7,500 new full-time Teamster jobs at UPS, and the fulfillment of 22,500 open positions. 60 total changes and improvements to the National Master Agreement. So, I mean, this is the deal. I frankly don't have the ability to assess if this is a deal that rank and file are going to be happy with or not. But there it is.
And they're meeting on the 31st, so next Monday, to vote on it, right? And so the agreement's still tentative. We've seen these kinds of things fall apart before. So, there is a potential that the rank and file could not agree to this in the way that's being advertised now. But for now, I would imagine that UPS wasn't just facing a ton of pressure internally, but externally, because there are other companies that have deals with UPS to ship and export their products that they were probably like, a strike would be disastrous to our business model as well, just given the sheer volume and number of workers, because the UPS Teamsters are the largest private sector collective bargaining agreement in on the continent. So it would have been immensely disruptive, which is why they have so much leverage, which is a good thing.
Exactly. And it's also really very much a choke point, right? Because nothing happens if these drivers don't drive. And also with the support that they were getting from the pilots, nothing's going to move. And there's no other business that UPS is engaging in. Whereas when you talk about the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strike against the producers, they have a lot of, old inventory that they can run. They have things that are in the pipeline. Their lead time is longer than it would be if you order a package, to be delivered from wherever it is, the pet store, and they're delivering it. A lot of things that have been in the pipeline for years are still just being released. There's also, within the context of the entertainment industry, a lot of mistakes that are made by executives, and this gives them a way of essentially canceling contracts that they realize were mistakes, because that's the nature of that business. But here is a clip. This is a TV writer, WGA strike captain Molly Nussbaum, speaking to the Wrap. I guess this was last week, but it really does a good job of articulating what the problem is with residuals, and also puts, I think, it clarifies a lot of the sort of the propaganda I've been seeing on Twitter X or whatever it is, that these writers are making enormous amounts of money. They are, but they're making for a very short period of time over the course of a year. And
it's lump sum.
Exactly. And here is Captain Molly Nussbaum explaining this dynamic about just via her own experience.
I was most recently on Marvel's Daredevil reboot. Before that, I was on The Umbrella Academy, and One of Us is Lying on Peacock. My career started in cable back when that was a thing, and now it's all streamers all the time. So because of that, I've felt how this model has changed and how the financial structure just doesn't make sense. The money that you make on a job has to now last you 6, 10, 12, 14 months. And when you don't have residuals coming to help you get through that, I was an executive producer in April on a hit show for a streaming platform, and I was driving for Lyft in December. That doesn't make any sense. We are creating this much profit, this much revenue for your companies. Why is it all going to the people at the top? Why is it all going to the shareholders who have not been the people creating that wealth for you? We are not asking for money that's not there. We are just asking for a reallocation of funds that reflects the value we bring to these companies.
And we should add, like, this is the whole question of AI. It's a little bit, sexier for people, but at the end of the day, it's fundamentally the same thing. It is, they want to use AI. First, they were proposing just for background actors, where they could take video of background actors. They will isolate these images, and then they will use them again over and over and over again as backgrounds for all different types of sets down the road. And it also sort of tips off the idea that a lot of that's going to be CGI'd in the future.
Yep.
So there's going to be other jobs that are going to be lost, but it's basically you work as a background actor for a day for $100 or whatever it is. And we're going to take your image and we're going to exploit it over and over and over and over again. And you're going to get no pay. And so it's the exact same dynamic. And of course, they want to do this ultimately with foreground actors and voice actors. And they want to have AI generate writing and all of those things. Anything that AI is going to generate, the inputs come from human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the inputs come from human beings' labor. And they want to basically run that through, take the inputs, pay for it once, maybe never again, put it through the box, and then just keeping those inputs, working those and exploiting those inputs, essentially that human labor over and over again without having to pay for it. And that's really ultimately, at the end of the day, the same broad dynamic as we're seeing with this move into streaming, which is, we get this work. The model was always about you're going to get deferred pay in the event that we keep using this. And now they're basically like, well, we're keep using it, but we're not giving you deferred pay anymore.
Yeah.
And that's more or less the same dynamic.
Go ahead, Matt.
It's just stolen labor.
It's fascinating to me. Brian Merchant has a column in the Los Angeles Times. Hollywood is on strike because CEOs fell for Silicon Valley's magical thinking. And AI is just the newest exponent of that, to be honest. Like all these promises sold by people like Reed Hastings at Netflix of this giant growth possibilities. This was all just inflated the same way a lot of these tech companies are. And that bubble has massively affected our entertainment system in a way that I think, we have to support the actual producers and workers who make these things over the people who are just, trying to commodify it for bankers.
Well,
for
purely
growth prospects.
selfish reasons too, in the sense that these people who are buying into these models, they they almost have contempt for the art. These are capitalists who are trying to milk this for all it's worth. Excluding the independent studios like A24 that accepted the union's requests as for sure. But these studio executives, the fact that they feel like they can replace what humanity provides through artistry, through AI imagery, or through AI writing, and they're buying into this. It just shows how completely foreign the actual the nature of artistry is to them.
Yeah, they don't actually make anything themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the bottom line is it's the exact way. I mean, they're treating labor in the exact same way that they treat labor always, which is you're not really a human being. You're really just a widget. And we don't need you when we don't need you. And when we do, that's the only time we're going to pay for you. And you have they presume the same level of humanity for that widget as they would for one of their workers. That's just the way that they contemplate. Yes, and
their experience watching and consuming the art that they're pumping out.
The fascinating thing for me is to watch the enormous investment that all of these outlets put into streaming channels, which just it was so obviously half-baked. When we did our show on Peacock, there was no way for us. We would take a clip from the show the other, I was talking about the other show. No, we did the Majority Report, and then we did a second interview show. And to be honest with you, I can't even remember the name of it. Can you remember what the name of it was?
I literally can't. What was it, like, reported?
I think maybe. And we would interview a couple of reporters. Maybe that's what it was. But the point is that we had these interviews. We would take clips, and we were allowed like one clip a day, and we would put it on our YouTube show. And then we could not provide a link back to the actual interview. We couldn't even provide a link that would take you directly to our show. And it was as if like they're not even on the internet. Or I should say, they're on the internet, but they're not on the wide world web.
Right.
They're just being streamed, and they ultimately just end up being just a different delivery mechanism for the exact same product. And the delivery mechanism, the only advantage of it was, I mean, to the consumer at the end of the day, just none. Really, as far as I could tell. But and then they're going to, when they have to write off these billions and billions and billions of dollars of losses, they're going to bury it in they want to basically say this is a function of the writers or the actors. And it really is just a function of executives and financiers messing up something that was producing, 5x returns instead of 100x returns. And that's where the whole Silicon Valley mentality comes in. If we can't get 100x return, there's no value to it. And we're going to talk about this. Increasingly, our entire economy is like this. And certainly within the context of drug production, we'll talk about that in a moment, based upon, a very nascent effort to change the way, or to really, in many respects, decommodify medicine, at least a part of it. We'll talk about that in a bit. First, a word from our sponsor. Speaking of the economy and whatnot, you could spend this summer thousands of dollars on taking planes, getting into hotels, visiting tourist traps, buying all sorts of like little tchotchkes and junk like my kids do. Or you can spend a lot less money and create a beautiful garden that's going to give you years of pleasure with fastgrowingtrees.com. Fastgrowingtrees.com has thousands of easy to grow plant, shrubs, tree varieties that are expertly curated for your unique climate and needs. You're in zone 5, they got a bunch of zone 5 plants and trees and shrubs. They got Meyer lemons, they got evergreens, they got shade trees, they got fruit trees. Like I say, they got tall grass. I mean, everything you could possibly imagine. And here's the beauty of it. You don't have to wait in line at a big box store where the people have no idea about the stuff that they're selling. It just happens to be whatever the truck brought in that week. You also have a much wider variety of things. And the amazing thing about fast growing trees is I don't think their trees actually grow faster than any other trees that are that size. But the point is they ship to you trees that are right at that point where they're about to be, they're on a natural course of a tree, their growth explodes. You can get trees 5-6 feet tall, and they have figured out how to deliver it to you quickly and efficiently. And you don't need to have a green thumb to have success with fast growing trees, because they have Zoom, chat, phone calls, where you can get in touch with their experts, and they can help you with anything that you are dealing with. They can help you, walk you through your entire garden to solve any type of problems you're having with your plants, your trees. Plus, fast-growing trees plant experts have specialized degrees and training. So this is not a big box store experience. It's sort of like like telehealth for your plants. Plus, Fast Growing Trees has a 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee. Everything's going to look great, fresh out of the box, or you get your money back. I have grown, Fast Growing Trees is one of those sponsors that I was using their product before they ever became a sponsor here. I have planted Korean pear trees, Bartlett pear trees, Arkansas black apple trees, Mutsu apple trees. I have planted tall grass. Everything I have ever gotten from fast growing trees, again, not only has gotten to be exactly when they say they're going to get it to me, but has come in great shape. Put it in the ground. I've never had a problem whatsoever. And again, and my bloomerangs. And the thing is, when you get a tree that size, sometimes you're a season away from getting a couple of pieces of fruit. Sometimes you're just a season away from the thing to start to explode when it takes real hold. Join almost 2 million happy fast-growing tree customers. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com/majority now. Get 15% off your entire order. That's 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com/majority. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Let's go into this. Obviously, their big story right now is the Israeli Knesset passed the other day, I guess yesterday, by a vote of, it's 120 members of the Knesset, if I remember correctly, and 64 members of the Knesset voted to essentially make it 64-0 because those who were voting against it boycotted the vote. And it essentially allowed for the Knesset to override the judicial rulings and to not just take things out of their jurisdiction, but to do so retroactively. It remains to be seen how the Israeli Supreme Court is going to respond. They basically have three broad choices. One is to strike down the law. One is to sort of narrowly interpret it. And the third is to basically decide not to hear it. They've already gotten petitions. You know, I as far as I can tell, sort of like, this is a certiorari sort of process. And we don't know yet whether they're going to hear it. But there have been massive protests. And we spoke about this 3 or 4 months ago. Can't remember off the top of my head now the name of the journalist. I think we had a couple of interviews about this. And
did you speak to Haggai Matar?
I think so.
972, maybe someone else from
Marone Rappaport. Yes. And really the question that Marone had at that time was, will the Jewish Israeli population citizenship of Israel coming out and protesting in numbers that have never been seen before in that country, not even close, will they be able to sort of square this circle and understand that the power grab that they're seeing by ultra-nationalists and religious fundamentalists within the context of Israeli society is an extension and simply a part of a greater whole of what has been going on with the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Israeli essentially blockade, outdoor jail that they have created in Gaza. And as of yet, there's really I've seen no indication that that's the case. But who knows? And here is a clip. This is Avner Gevarayu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's co-director of Breaking the Silence. And it's an Israeli veteran group. We should say that we haven't seen yet what's going to happen with reservists if they're going to go on strike. The Israeli medical association is planning to go on strike today. They will be providing no medical care unless it's urgent or an emergency.
And some people say that the general strike is very much on the table for Israel, which just goes to show, just for the added context really quickly, the Israel doesn't have a constitution, and essentially the Supreme Court is what provides that structure of precedent and like the ability for the standard of reasonableness essentially to uphold the institutions in the government.
Here is that video posted to Twitter yesterday from the co-director of Breaking the Silence. He's speaking in Hebrew. There are English words on the screen. I will read those for folks who are listening to the podcast and don't speak Hebrew. But let's roll this. So where are the coaches and demonstrate of the right-wing overhaul? Listen to this. Names of places. Settlement, outpost, another settlement, another outpost, an entire demonstration support, and almost no transportation coming from within Israel, only in the occupied. And no, it's not a coincidence. Every week that the boat, okay, you got to slow it down for me. I can't, it's too fast.
It's the TikTokification. They're going super fast.
Yeah, see if you can you slow it down just a hair?
Yeah,
Is that possible?
Yeah.
So, but what he is showing here on the screen are, different areas that are, I believe, where the people who are pushing this overhaul are from, and that they are settlement outposts, essentially. So, like, showing the interconnectedness of this effort to overhaul the judiciary with the settlement desires of the right in Israel.
Yes, I mean, be clear. This is the 64 who voted in favor of this are part of the most right-wing coalition that has ever created an Israeli government. They are ultra right-wing nationalists. They are also ultra fundamentalist Jews. And this combination of the ultra religious and the ultra nationalists, there's those concentric circles overlap, but not perfectly. But the point that he's making here is that the authoritarian impulse from these people that subjugates the Palestinians, or I should say the authoritarian impulse that drives this legislation to disempower the Supreme Court, is the same authoritarian impulse that is oppressing the Palestinians. And he is basically urging his fellow Israelis to come to this realization. You cannot allow for this type of essentially fascism to take place with one hand and assume that the other hand ultimately isn't going to start to exercise it as well. Are we ready, Bradley?
Yep.
Okay. This is really. So where are the coaches coming from to demonstrate in support of the right-wing overhaul coming from? Listen to this. They're coming from Esh Kodesh, Givat Asaf, Kiryat Arba, Negahot, Asael, Otniel, Hebron, Mitzah Yeriko, settlement, outpost, another settlement, another outpost, an entire demonstration in support of the overhaul, and almost no transportation coming from within Israel, only from the occupied Palestinian territories. And no, it's not a coincidence. Every week, more and more people understand that both the occupation and the judicial overhaul are led by the settler right wing, their rabbis, their disciples, their Betzal Smotrich, and their Simcha Rotman. Look at who is organizing this massive transportation for settlers. A bunch of organizations which are busy morning to night maintaining the occupation and attacking anyone who dares expose the reality beyond the green line. It can no longer be denied. It can no longer be dismissed with not now, or now is not the time. And the fear that will scare away the protesters, that will spook right-wing moderates, choosing to ignore, it has a price. Because while we demonstrate with hundreds of thousands in Israel, We forbid any demonstrations by Palestinians in the occupied territories. While we rightly fight to maintain our justice system independent, we judge thousands within a warped and corrupt system in the occupied territories. And while we fight against Ben Gvir's nightmare plan for administrative detentions in Israel, at any given moment, there are hundreds of Palestinians held in administrative detention. While we are fighting the judicial overhaul, they are focused one and all in annexing the occupied territories. So yes, there is a connection. It's clear. And it cries out, we have already upheld a military dictatorship in the occupied territories for 56 years. Some thought that the settler movement would be satisfied with that, but it is insatiable. And now they want more. We must look this reality in the eye. Dare to see it. Don't shy away. Go one step further. Come together in understanding that there is no choice. There are no shortcuts. True democracy requires ending the occupation. I mean, it is in many respects it's very obvious. It's not like if you've got these authoritarian fasci impulses, at the end of the day, you don't really care who you gear them towards. It's really just a question of your power and your ability to do so. It was easier for the authoritarian and fascistic and racism, essentially, to exert its control over the Palestinians, and it has been that case for 60 some odd years, and it was only when this movement grew and then got the power to do so over Israelis within the state of Israel that they did it. And there is, but fundamentally the impulse is exactly the same. It's just a question of what they could get away with. And that's where we're at now. And it's unclear how that message, how far and wide that message will travel in the context of Israel.
I mean, even just hearing like the boycotting of the vote that was done by the minority or like the opposition, essentially, it just shows, it puts into stark relief what is possible if this cognitive dissonance about Palestinians was broken. Like, there is the possibility for solidarity within Israel. It's just not for Palestinians. And I don't know how we can make that connection at this point. I mean, hopefully things are starting to break, but it's deeply depressing. It doesn't seem to be like there's much movement.
Well, and I mean, to the extent that we can do anything in this country, it becomes incumbent upon Biden to, I think they said that they were disappointed, and we probably will. They probably rescinded their invitation to Netanyahu to come and visit. But
after Herzog just visited and the House just passed a resolution saying Israel was not a racist state, signed on to by the head of the Progressive Caucus. Great job.
I think if Biden comes out with a stronger position, it's going to give oxygen for more Democrats to step away. And it is hard to imagine that there is no pressure on the administration to finally sort of because for so long we have been told the reason why we in this country support with our dollars Israel so unconditionally has always been, it is because it is the only democracy in the region. And it's, which of course is an absurd perversion of the term democracy. If you can be occupying millions of people, providing them no sovereignty or autonomy or and call that a democracy. But now at least there is, for the sake of because their fear of in any way sort of supporting Palestinian rights, there is the opportunity to recognize that these anti-democratic forces have now just turned their processes upon, the citizens of Israel who, we give a some type of higher status because they're not being occupied, I guess. And so there's an opportunity here. We'll see if that happens. But we should, I think we should have Marone back on soon, Bradley. Let's see if we can arrange to do that either, on one of these days. Okay. Moving to other news in this country, we talked about, I think, was it yesterday or was it last week? Maybe it was Friday. The report, there was basically a whistleblower with the Texas state troopers who had been, who I must have gone to the press with what Governor Abbott has been doing in the Rio Grande, creating these sort of buoys that are wrapped in razor wire and putting them in the areas where migrants cross in the Rio Grande, causing the drowning deaths of a mother and two children, cutting and injuring dozens other of migrants, making it very difficult and dangerous for immigration border patrol to go and help people, even to capture them as they're trying to come across the Rio Grande, because it is just as dangerous if you're a migrant trying to cross, or essentially a cop trying to go get them or keep them from drowning. And so yesterday, the Justice Department filed suit against the state of Texas over these floating barriers. The New York Times reported there's been a growing outcry among Democrats and even some in Texas law enforcement over other increasingly aggressive tactics the state is using to block immigrants, including installing additional layers of concertina wire, which is razor wire. I don't know why they don't. Along the banks of the Rio Grande, state police officers have been shouting at migrants to turn back, and in some cases, refusing to provide water to people who request it. The federal government's arguing that Texas is in violation of the section of the Federal Rivers and Harbors Appropriation Act that prohibits the placement of structures in waterways without federal approval. This Times piece mentions that several officers inside the agency have raised concerns. We talked about that the other day. But Border Patrol officials have also complained to Texas law enforcement that it's made it more difficult for border agents to help migrants. It could lead to more drownings. On Friday, 80 Democratic representatives in the U.S. House, including all of those from Texas, signed a letter to Biden urging him to investigate the Operation Lone Star program. So the federal government has filed suit. We'll see what happens. I mean, this is,
That's good, but again, undercut again by Biden's own militancy at the border, his continuation of Title 42 for way too long, his turning away of Haitian migrants, other migrants, but when you militarize the border this much, you enable this kind of brutality. That's just what happens. But it's a good story. It's a good news. It's good that the Biden administration's
it was quick.
Yeah.
And the idea that the Times though, and I don't think they were the ones who broke the story of like all of this coming from literally the people who are responsible for enforcing these things. It's coming from his own goon squad of border patrol people that he has put on the border are coming back and complaining, saying what we're being asked to do is inhumane. How inhumane do you have to be? Like, are your policies that that your own border patrol people, whose entire reason to exist at this point is to prevent migrants from coming in, are saying it's too inhumane? That's pretty impressive, I guess, but not in a good way. The story in Axios today, which is interesting, and it raises a couple of, I don't want to get too, we've been trying to avoid, I don't know if people know, we've been trying to avoid, at least to a certain extent, talking about the 2024 election. It's impossible. Our whole, political media is geared towards it. But we were going to wait at least until September, although DeSantis has been too much fun, but in part also because he is the things he's doing in Florida become a template for other Republican fasci governors around the country. We'll talk about that in a minute, but new job numbers that are coming from the states, according to Axios. From Pennsylvania to Washington to Alabama, 17 states saw jobless rates hit new record lows or hold at a previously notched low in June. This is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That group includes New Hampshire and South Dakota. Both are tied for the lowest unemployment rates in the nation at 1.8% in June, both ticking down from 1.9%. Nationally, the unemployment rate was 3.6%. 14 other states, including Florida, 2.6%, Kentucky 3.8%, Montana 2.4% have unemployment rates hovering at 0.1 or 0.2 percentage points above all-time low levels. We should say, I don't have the data on participation rate for states, but the participation rate is now, at least nationally speaking, essentially where it was in 2019, maybe a little bit lower even. I should say a little bit higher. In the key years from 24 to 54. I think COVID, a lot of people over the age of 54 took early retirement, and they would probably be now in their, early 60s maybe, or would be, at 65 essentially. The dynamic was on display at the state level. Employment data was released on Friday. You've got Republican governors trying to run against Joe Biden, but then also saying we have record low unemployment numbers in this state. And of course, 16 other states around the country. A part of this is, at least in part, a function. There have been 800,000 manufacturing jobs added in Biden's 2.5 years in office. Much of this is coming from the
CHIPS Act.
The CHIPS Act, and to some extent, the IRA. Texas is the top state for new manufacturing jobs, 86,000 from January 21 to May 23. California, 79,000. Florida, 37. Ohio, 31. Georgia, 29. Nevada had the greatest increase percentage-wise, followed by Montana and Wyoming. Many red states. And then there's at least anecdotal evidence that the AP is writing about how the climate law is turbocharging the clean energy technology. But the interesting thing about this, at least in the context of there's two things. One, let's be clear. The economy may be doing well in its traditional measures. The problem is that we have too much of what is important for a human being to need to survive be too expensive and difficult. I'm talking about healthcare and I'm talking about housing primarily. We have obviously also in every sort of societal ill or deficiency that comes with that. We have far too many unhoused people in this country. The reasons for this are largely just, you can say, capitalism. You can boil down and you can say like, oh, well, we have like, Blackstone and BlackRock buying up apartments and houses, in the way that, I don't know, I don't even know an example. I corner the market on liquid IV or something. And it's driving up the prices for people. We have cities and states that don't. How many luxury apartments do we have in New York City that are sitting empty? And you can't build those apartments without the city essentially saying, okay. We're not addressing these fundamental issues, but the economy, in terms of the way that we look at the numbers, and broadly speaking, within this sort of construct of to the winner gets everything, all the spoils, and a lot of people are losers. The economy, in terms of these numbers, is still pretty good. You talk about everybody having a job. You talk about inflation ticking down now. And if you look at the approval numbers of Donald Trump when he exited the White House, when the economy was really, things were pretty bad in the wake of COVID, and Joe Biden's approval numbers as to where they are right now with the economy, you start to realize that, at least from an electoral standpoint, the Democrats do not know how to make an argument or win an argument about this with the American public. There is, on some level, like some type of disconnect. I've been reading up on this and looking at charts and following some Twitter threads or whatever it was formerly called. There was an adjustment in politics when television became so prominent. And on some level, it is as if if you could imagine this concept, we have very old Democratic leadership that does not know how to communicate with a massive revolution in the way that people communicate and the way that people get ideas in their heads. None of us have the ability to feel the economy, broadly speaking, any more than I can tell you that I can feel that climate change is affecting the globe.
Because of just the mass financialization.
It's also like we don't, as human beings, we don't have the ability to know what's going on in every part of the country. We can't, we know our own experiences. These are ideas. The idea that the economy is doing well or doing poorly are ideas that are generated by, outside of us. We can make an argument that there is a fundamental problem in the way that U.S. society and our economy is structured, which I would do in terms of not just in terms of financialization, but again about the way certain things are commodified and should be decommodified. But sadly, that's not the perspective of the vast majority of Americans, even ones who I might vote in the same way as. But and frankly, if I am under the misapprehension that the economy is bad in the way that it is traditionally bad, as opposed to even when it's doing well, it is substandard as to what I believe society should provide for members of society, it is harder to communicate that and understand that we have reached the full capacity of what this kind of system can do if people don't understand that within the measure of this system as it exists, our economy is doing quite well. And that should be the problem. Not that the economy is bad on the terms that it's always been discussed, but rather that when the economy is good in the terms that we discussed, it is still insufficient.
Yeah, I mean, we're back to even better maybe than pre-COVID, but that was still the economy that led to like a Bernie Sanders and Trump style populism. And yeah, like there was a joke like we made the TMBS live show that rentiers for UBI, right? Because like you put more money into the system like that, and yeah, it's going to have some good effects, and down to like the velocity of money, as economists like to say. It's better to have more money in people's pockets, but ultimately, in our society, it's going to get hoovered up by rentiers.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Dave from Jamaica says, Sam, don't people feeling on the economy based on their own personal circumstances? A lot of times, no, actually. If you look at the polling, a lot of times the polling will say, well, the economy's doing fine for me, but it's doing poorly overall.
I mean, even when there's a recession, some Republicans, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but Republicans still maintain certain levels of like trust in the economy. When you poll the American public nationally, it might dip even temporarily. I can't speak to that because I don't remember, but like that is a part of decades long of conditioning about, you know, the Republican Party being better to stimulate the economy through tax cuts and being the business party.
But if you look back to eras where the economy is performing well based upon the metrics that we accept or have traditionally accepted for what constitutes a good economy, GDP, employment, inflation, you know, those three things, essentially, wage growth. If you look at those four things, by all accounts, and this also, you know, assumes that we're going to have a cooling. Well, we've had a cooling of inflation. That the economy, as by that measure, is doing as well as it's done in some instances, in some of those metrics, you know, decades. And usually, regardless of who's in office, people make that argument. The economy is good. It's very easy to find in the polling. The economy is good for me, but it's not good broadly speaking. That is just generally across the board. That is what polling has shown. Okay. That people have a perception of the economy that is not necessarily based upon their own experience. And usually their sense of the economy is worse than what it is for their own experience, unless, you know, obviously their wages are low, or they can't afford housing, or they can't afford medical care. And that has been untethered to a large extent. And I guess my argument is that that is incredibly unhelpful in terms of from an electoral standpoint. B, it's also unhelpful in the sense that like we are doing the best we can do, and it's still insufficient. That's hard to assess at that point when you don't realize, like, under our capitalist system, we're doing the best that we can do. Almost, we're pretty close to what the system can provide based upon the way that it's structured, and it's still insufficient for millions upon millions of Americans. We could change that. We cut child poverty in our little, you know, whatever it was, 12-month experiment by nearly 40%. We had the largest number of people on Medicaid, which is essentially, you know, free healthcare that we've had It's all been rolled back now.
Well, because that entire
Largely.
time we were anxious about if people wanted to work anymore.
Yeah.
And that also can explain some of like the disconnect between what people perceive as their own economic circumstances and the economy more broadly. Because even if people are hurting, like there is decades and decades of cultural kind of indoctrination to make people feel like it's their fault anyway.
But when we talk about decommodifying something, this is happening. People should pay attention to it. I mean, it's so nascent right now, but you know, Bernie Sanders has been holding up Biden's his top health nominees, in part because I think he basically wanted from the Biden administration a green light to go forward with this type of legislation. It is on Thursday of last week. The HELP Committee, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, chaired by Bernie Sanders, voted to include a part of an amendment to a bill reauthorizing the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Act. It was reported out of committee 17-3. This is really nascent, but it's important. It allocates $3 million for the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine to study different models to pay for the development of new drugs. NASM, which was created by Congress to provide high-quality advice on technical issues, would have to produce the report within 2 years. This piece is written by John Schwartz in the Intercept. Basically, the bill says to NASM, that's the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, Medicine, to look at two different ways of funding drugs. The government paying for it directly, or innovation prizes for inventors. I don't know that they're mutually exclusive. And then drugs created in this manner would then be placed in the public domain and sold as generics. If you know anything about what happens with generics, right now, when a patent on a drug has expired and there are 5 generic companies producing it, price can fall 85% on the cost of a drug. Drugs are expensive to develop. Drugs are expensive to test. They are relatively cheap to manufacture. In the 10 years from 2009 to 2019, the lower cost of generics saved the U.S. healthcare system $2.2 trillion. As it stands right now, the patent that these drug companies get exists for 20 years. And very often, the federal government pays a significant portion of that development cost.
I mean,
grants.
It was, on turbocharged with the vaccine. Like
Totally.
If people want, an example in their minds of what this it looks like in practice, you probably are familiar with the fact that in Operation Warp Speed, we just gave a bunch of money to the pharmaceutical companies without strings in terms of like intellectual property and ownership. And that's what happens on a daily basis with federal funding of this kind of stuff. And then they get to hold on for a patent for 20 years, make a bunch of money, and gouge essentially the cost of that drug, even though it was federal investment that helped develop it.
And keep in mind, Congress has, and Schwartz makes this point, Congress has the power to promote science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. In other words, Congress has the power to issue patents. But it does not need, it is not required to issue patents. This is simply a choice that is made very often after billions of dollars have been spent by the pharmaceutical industry to essentially give them monopolies for 20 years. The U.S. pharmaceutical industry is incredibly costly. 2021 revenues of $550 billion and profits far higher than those of other industries. the price of these drugs may not be worth the worst of it, he writes. And this, I've had conversations with like venture capitalists, medical venture capitalists, and it is some of the most distressing conversations you could possibly have, because they have seen such a wide array of medical cures and therapies that we just assume can't exist. But it turns out they can exist, but they can't be profitable. So people don't invest in them. And in addition, according to Schwartz, patents perversely disincentivize companies from developing actual cures, because if you have a one and done cure for an ailment, there's no business model. It's like I mean, I'm not plugging them right now, but that Henson shaving, like they set out to create the best razor, not the best razor business. The best razor business is one where I give you the handle and you're going to keep coming back to me to buy the blades.
Mm-hmm.
My parents had a fridge that has only been around for 9 years, and it was a brand new, really nice fridge, and it's kaput, and I have to buy a new one now. And I'm sitting here with one that's like 25 years old in Brooklyn. I'm not saying I don't know. I'm not expert in fridges, but it just seems like a pattern.
But that's obsolescence. The what the drug manufacturers are doing is more like the printer business.
Subscription,
right? The printer costs not that much, but you just got to keep buying the ink, and that's where all the money's made. There is no value in me giving you a pill, a medicine that is going to cure your disease in a week or even 10 days or 2 months or 3 months, versus one which you're going to have to take every day for years and years and years. This, according to Schwartz, has led to the systemic underdevelopment of new antibiotics, with disastrous results. Over 1 million people worldwide are now killed every year by antibiotic-resistant bacteria, with the number potentially rising to 10 million by 2050. Goldman Sachs, apparently in 2018, wrote in a report, the potential to deliver one-shot cures is the most attractive aspects of gene therapy, but while this proposition carries tremendous value for patients and society, it could represent a challenge for genome medicine developers looking for sustained cash flow. In other words, capitalism is actually preventing the development of medicine, of superior medicine, because, and this goes with every single aspect of our society, the purpose of corporations, of companies, or whatever, is not to put out the best product. The purpose of these companies is to put out the most profitable product. And even if you have competition, both of them are working on the same, both these competitors are working on the same constraints as each other, which is it must be profitable. And I can put out a drug that you need to take every day and gives me $100 billion worth of revenues annually. And you could say, well, I can put out a drug that's going to cure you in 2 weeks. And eventually you're going to kill our market, and you're not going to do it because it's not going to make sense. You might come out with a pill that like, oh, you only have to take one every 2 days. That's where the competition is going to lead to. It's not going to drive one of them to destroy their market. They've both invested too much. And that's the problem with commodifying these things that people need and can enhance our lives. So listen to this. Money from the National Institutes of Health, government funded, contributed to the development of every single one of the 210 new drugs approved by the FDA from 2010 to 2016. Every single new drug was paid for in part, at least, with government money. It basically provided $100 billion subsidy, but It's even greater than that because that first money in is far riskier and far more valuable. So this study would examine this issue and more. There is a question as to whether the Pandemic and All Hazards Preparedness Acts will have to pass the entire Senate, and then the study would have to survive reconciliation with the House version. So we shall see. But it is a vision of maybe where we could actually get, better drugs, better pharmaceuticals, and at lower cost. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Teamsters again reached a historic tentative agreement, according to them, for workers in the history of UPS. We'll have more on that, obviously, tomorrow. We're going to take a quick break. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. Become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, you have, I think, 2 more days of the justcoffee.coop sale. MR25 gets you 25% off Just Coffee. Now is the time to stock up and to try different coffees. They got great, all sorts of different great blends. Obviously, the Majority Report is the superior one, but great time to try all of their coffees. JustCoffee.coop, great outfit, co-op, very supportive of all of their suppliers, all fair trade, but really beyond. They bend over backwards to help these folks. And the effing dork shirts. That's a limited run. It ends at the end of this month at shop.majorityreportradio.com. So now is the time to load up on your Majority Report merch and your Just Coffee. Check it out. And don't forget, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityReport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you get the fun half. And you can IM us and on the app at majorityapp.com. Emma, what's happening on ESPN?
Well, we spoke about the RB labor action that is happening and brewing. We also talked.
That's running back.
Running backs. Yes, running backs in the NFL. We also discussed the politics behind the sale of the Washington franchise to Dan Snyder. And we touched on some other things. We took some calls on UFC, other stuff. Really good episode, youtube.com/ESPN show. And we're very close to 10,000 subscribers. So it would be nice if some people could get us over the hump. Bradley's made a lot of promises about humiliating himself on camera for some reason, voluntarily making these promises.
What's he going to do?
I mean, he says he's going to light himself on fire, but remains to be seen.
Maybe save that for 100K.
Yeah, I think
eat a
so.
frog.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of things running through his brain. I think you should check with your fiance first about some of those changes to your body. But youtube.com/ESPN show.
And tonight on Left Reckoning, Maximilian Alvarez, Working People's Podcast, and also we'll be talking about Cornel West is on Jimmy Dore's bad side. Elon Musk has a bunch of amazing ideas to basically take over half the financial system, which is really exciting.
Wow.
And let's see. I think that and also Russell Brand talking to Ron DeSantis. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning tonight at 7 Eastern time.
All right, quick break. Fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back, boys back, and the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back, boys back, and the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back, back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back, 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 back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back, 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 back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back, back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
We bring back DJ Dinner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dinner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See, white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them, fuck them.
Oh. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
and the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black African. And the alpha males are black, 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 black. And the Africans are